don't know, I'm Adam Davis. I'm one of the directors of product here at Productboard and also our product makers community lead. I'm very excited to have Sanket Kavishwar with us here today. So Sanket, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, super excited to be here.
Awesome, mate. So Sanket is a senior product manager at Reliance AI, and Sanket has spent time as an engineer and working with customers across all the different touch points as well. So I think we're going to learn a ton about all the kind of different customer interactions and roles that he's done. He's been able to bring it into his product role. So Sanket, for those that don't know, can you tell us a little bit about what Reliance AI do?
Yeah, I wouldn't be a good product manager if I don't plug my own product. So yeah, Reliance AI, we are a SaaS platform for managing privacy programs. So we're taking a very different approach to scaling, privacy programs. Like if you're a company trying to operate in the EU or in the US, like compliance with GDPR or CCPA, or a bunch of these other regulations, we take a very technical approach to it and help automate most aspects of running a privacy program. So yeah, super excited. We've been building this for the last 3 years. We have a ton of great customers, and yeah, every day is fun at Reliance.
Awesome, great, Sanket, brilliant. So today, Sanket's joining us to talk about how can product teams work better with customer success teams to create better product experiences. So something that is certainly close to my heart, and I know a lot of product folks are really passionate about. So we'll be kicking off the session now. If you do have any questions, please drop them in the comments and also our Q&A section, and we'll be leaving about 10 or 15 minutes at the end for Sanket to help answer some of those questions. So with that, Sanket, I'll hand over to you, and you should be able to share your screen.
Awesome. Let me quickly get to, can you all see my deck?
Yeah, looks good.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining. It's super cool to see a lot of people from different parts of the world tuning in, and I hope this session is valuable. So I'm going to talk about customer-centric product management, and in the context of this session, what this means is how do you actually kind of 10x your relationship with your customer success team if you're a product manager today. So as a part of this, like I'll add a little bit of context and background of where I'm coming from. Why do I like to speak about this topic? We're going to look into the incentives that each team has. Arguably, these two teams are super critical for A, creating good products, and B, creating good customer experiences. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what are the incentives that drive these teams. Obviously, most people I'm sure know what drives product management, but for some of you, at least, who might not be familiar with the CS or customer success world, I'm going to unwrap that a little bit. And then I'll start getting into some tactical stuff. I have articulated buckets of things that product can help customer success with, and then buckets of things that product can get from customer success. So I'm going to talk a little bit about these two areas, and eventually I'm going to share some tactical approaches. I'm going to share stuff that has worked for me, and things you can literally do today when you get out of the session, and things you can think about implementing in the medium short term, right? And finally, I swear Adam is not paying me to do this. I'm going to share a little bit about how do you do all of this in Productboard. So I use Productboard today. I assume some of you might be using that tool. So that's the tool I use to do some of these process and operational things. So I'll share a slide on how to tactically do this in Productboard. So yeah, I hope this is helpful. And just to kind of kick off here and give all of you context on, Adam already introduced me, so I'll just add a little more context to that. Yeah, my name is Sanket, based in San Francisco. And I started my career at Oracle as a software engineer. So I got an undergrad in software engineering, spent some time working on a financial banking product. And then from there, I completely pivoted. I moved to PwC, and I spent some time ERP consulting. And that pivot was fairly extreme. It's right from engineering to being super customer facing and being on the front lines, if you will. And from there, I moved to this company called Medallia. I joined it when it was a Series E startup, and it was a product on customer experience management. So I joined that company. I kind of spent a lot of time in almost every single touch point you can imagine in a post-sales role. So I was doing implementations, I was doing customer success, I was doing professional services, customer support. So spent a lot of time there. And Medallia is, where I interacted a lot with our product teams as well, and got a lot of these insights and kind of figured out things that work well, figured out things that don't work well. And from there, I moved on to Reliance AI, which is where I am today. And I joined in to kind of set up the skeleton of our post-sales team, and then moved on to product management. I work with almost all of our early customers here. And so this is where, kind of this range of experience is why I like speaking about this topic. I say here that I'm a shoe wearer, and I literally wore different shoes when I was in customer success or when I was in product management. So this transition has given me what I like to think a unique perspective on this whole relationship. And these are not kind of frameworks that I saw on the internet and I just plastered it in a process in my company, but these are genuine problems that I was put in a position where we had to solve them. And so a lot of things I'm going to share today stem from just organically from dealing with this problem as a function of being like an early stage startup. So really makes me kind of passionate about this topic. And B, I'm also a growth mindset nerd. So a lot of my kind of worldview is about looking at, being like basically being curious and learning about different, in the context of this conversation about different people, different teams, what's important for them. And that ethos has always stayed with me. So that's a big part of why I like this topic and how my experiences has given me some of these insights. Now let's talk about why is it important to talk about this, right? Why should we even care about a customer success and a product management relationship? Now, the obvious is that a good customer experience and product managers building good products is the ideal state that everyone wants to get to. But I'm sure maybe some of you might be facing interesting symptoms like this. In this meme, for example, it's a very common cop-out for us where we say, oh, great, a CSM asked me to do something. I'm just going to add it to the roadmap. That's it. I'm done. I don't have to look into this again. And I'm guilty of this at times too. And this is, I think, a good symptom of lack of curiosity or lack of trust between product management and customer success. Okay? And on the other side, when I was a CSM, for example, a big part of CSMs is making your customers successful and making sure they renew. And, you create all these fancy plans and success plans. And it's very easy to say that, great, everything that the customer is asking for is critical. But that's not really a helpful situation. It doesn't help the customer. It doesn't help CSMs. It doesn't help product management. But the point of me saying all of this is I think there are a lot of efficiencies in this relationship that we can all capitalize on. And these are just some of the symptoms, but I think capitalizing on these efficiencies can actually help create better products and create better experiences. Great. So if we have established why it's important to talk about this, let me maybe kind of take you through a journey of incentives for customer success. And I'm just going to assume that some or most people on the call haven't been a CSM. If you have, that's awesome. Would love to get your thoughts after this. But if you haven't, I'm just going to really, for a lack of a better word, go back to first principles of starts. I just simplify this and talk about what really drives customer success, right? And the reason I'm talking about incentives is because any process change or any time, at least based on my experience, when two group of humans have to interact, we need to tie it back to the incentives they have to really get the best bang for your buck. Otherwise, it'll just be a bunch of people, forced to do things that they don't want to do. So let's talk about incentives. Incentives and customer success. So straight up, first is, you make your customers successful. It's in the name, and it is extremely critical. That's your main job as a CSM. You want to make sure that your customers are getting value from the product that they just bought. And a big part of making customers successful is understanding how does your product create tangible business value. Like, customers are not buying products because they love feature A or feature B. And I'm sure most people on the call know this, right? Customers are buying products because someone somewhere has maybe an OKR, and one of their OKRs your product can help with. So a lot of incentivization in CS is about understanding what will make your customer successful. So I'll say that's point number one. Second thing, obviously super common, it's about securing renewals. So a lot of what customer success does is put in strategies, put in tactics, and they put in things in place that make sure customers are successful. And as a result of that, they renew because, the renewal rate and customers consistently renewing year over year is a phenomenal business sign for your company. So extremely critical. And I bet a lot of CSMs in your companies that you all work in today have a similar mindset that I'm sharing here. And finally, I'll say the other big incentive here that drives CSMs is managing expectations. A lot of customers think, and rightly so, that they have unique business problems. And they know, and they're smart enough to know that your product team and your engineering team is not a feature factory. They're not going to give everything that they ask for. But I think playing and managing these expectations is an extremely crucial part of any good kind of customer and CSM relationship, and articulating this. So if these are the incentives, on the right here, I'm going to share a little bit about tactics that CS folks might use. And I've used them extensively. And this is obviously not like a super exhaustive list, but I think it covers the top headlines. The first one is, you really want to accelerate time to value. It's a no-brainer, right? If you want to make customers successful, and if they want to get value from your product, you got to get them up and running as soon as possible. So a lot of things in implementations or customer success, or generally in post-sales, will be geared on getting them up to speed. And this kind of translates into making sure there's self-service documentation, making sure the product is as self-service as possible, so that you don't have to talk to a bunch of human beings or have like a 9-month project plan sometimes to just get like the first slice of value from the product. So that's kind of one of the tactics. Second is recurring meetings. This is a great opportunity for every CSM, and I bet every CSM that you talk to, or most CSMs, will have some form of recurring meetings with their customers. They might be bi-weekly, they might be monthly, but really the point is to understand and gauge customer sentiment in these meetings. They bought your product, let's say they have a 12-month relationship where the renewal is up in 12 months. So these meetings are really a chance for CSMs to understand, what are customers doing with your product? Are they liking it? Do they have issues? Is it actually solving business problems or not? So this is a very, very useful tactic. And I'm going to talk a little bit ahead in the presentation about how product management can actually help with recurring meetings. The third here I have is understanding the human being. Like I said, customers don't buy products because they have features. They buy products because they likely have OKRs that they need to solve. And understanding who uses the product and what do they care about, what do their bosses care about, I think is a really important skill that a lot of CSMs have. And that really translates into kind of the business proposition or the value proposition of your product for your customers. So really important. A lot of CSMs you talk to will have a lot of tactics to kind of help uncover this. And finally is conducting business reviews. So again, very, very common tactic. I'm sure some of you might have already heard about this, but very common in the CS world to run QBRs, like quarterly business reviews, and half-yearly or annual business reviews. And the whole point of doing that is, if your recurring meetings are a way to be tactical and talk about day-to-day things, your business reviews are really like taking a step back and understanding in the bigger picture, how is your product changing the game for your customers? So it's an absolutely important and a crucial thing. And so kind of if I'm summarizing all of this, make customers successful, CSMs want to secure renewals, and they want to manage expectations. And the reason, again, I'm underlining this is anything that you think about about working with your customer success team, I would encourage you to think about it in these terms, because this is what most CS teams will care about at the end of the day. Okay, great. I've talked about what customer success and what their incentives are. Let's talk about product management. And again, this is a very simplified view, and I'm sure most of you probably know more about this than I do today. But if I'm really boiling this down in the context of this presentation, the three incentives that I'm articulating, one is obviously we want to build products that create value. We don't want to build the next fancy notification bell or like a great, amazing, spend 6 months building an export if it's not creating value for your customer. So that's really an incentive that drives me, and I hope that drives a lot of people on this call. Second is we want to increase adoption. This is special for me personally. I am, pretty, almost like a maniac about making sure customers are using the product that I'm helping build, because I spend so much time building it. So it's definitely one of the things that drives me, and I'm sure it's one of the things that drives a lot of people on this call. And finally, a big part of our role obviously is stakeholder alignment and management. A big part is communication. It's communicating upstream, either with leadership or with your CSMs or with engineering. But a lot of the day-to-day that we do, like managing roadmaps and sharing updates or creating whatever go-to-market decks, a lot of that is about aligning with different stakeholders in the company. So the reason I'm calling this out, obviously this is common knowledge for most people on this call, but these incentives drive product management. And obviously we have a lot of these tactics, right? We know about mission and vision statements, roadmaps, we know about all about analytics. The reason I'm calling this out is it actually aligns very neatly with what customer success wants. And that's the good news here. The fact that things that drive both of our teams are already well aligned, and the game is really just about capitalizing on that and creating efficiencies and building processes that make sense and that cater to these incentives. And what I mean by this is, if customer success wants to make customers successful and we want to build products that create value, guess what? Creating products that create value actually makes customers successful. And same with renewals. If our goal is to increase adoption, and if CS wants to secure renewals, every health metric that you'll see on the internet probably has product adoption as the top kind of input, if you will. If adoption is low, the customer is automatically red, it's unhealthy, and they're not going to renew. And the good news is that it's already aligned with what we want to do. And finally, same with managing expectations and stakeholder alignment. Our goal is to ensure all stakeholders are aligned, and CS's goal is to make sure the customers are aligned as well, and they are managing expectations. They're not overselling or underselling something. So that's the good news. And if all of these things are already aligned, okay, how do we actually play this out in practice? So let's talk about, what do customer success teams need from product management? And I have categorized all these areas in like these 5 buckets, and maybe some of them you're already familiar with, maybe some of them are new. But let me start from the first one. It's expectation management, right? I talked about how that's a huge incentive for CS. When I was in customer success, like literally like clockwork in every other call, you get questions like, hey, is feature X on the roadmap? If yes, like when will it ship? If not, why not? And what is your product team's opinions on why it's not on the roadmap? And managing all these questions is extremely challenging if the product team doesn't enable customer success. So it's extremely critical to give this to your CS team, and it can look in a lot. It can have a lot of different ways. For example, it could mean maybe creating a Slack channel, which I've done in the past. It could mean enabling your customer success team with roadmaps, your current roadmap, and maybe roadmap for the next quarter. But having any clarity on like enhancements is extremely crucial and builds immense credibility with the customer. So I would put a lot of this in bucket number 1. And this is where I would encourage everyone to work with their CS teams and figure out what the gaps are. Where do they need help in this area? The second I'll say is what's shipped. And this, this arguably for me is one of the biggest points. And the point I'm making here is don't devalue your features. You might think that whatever you're working on is maybe a small feature, is, it's not like mission critical, it's not like a new module. That's okay. You never know when a feature that you think is small is probably, a critical role in a customer success plan for customer A or customer B. So it's extremely important in my mind to enable your CS team and share information on what's shipped. And it's extremely hard to do it in a small company. Like a lot of this experience for me is based on early stage startups. In big companies, there might be already like giant processes set in place, but in a small company, because things move so quickly, it's extremely challenging to always keep them in the loop, but I think it's definitely worth the effort. I talked a little bit earlier about how customer success uses recurring meetings to talk to customers, right? And what's shipped is a great hook to reconnect with the customers. Like I cannot count the number of situations I've been in where the customer has stopped responding for whatever reason. They're not responding to my emails, they're not responding to my executive emails. And then suddenly we send a notification saying, hey, you know what, something you asked for, we actually ship, and boom, that creates the hook to kind of rekindle that relationship. So there's a lot of value in sharing and kind of, almost selling your features internally and making sure the CS team knows how to talk about it. Because you literally never know which feature means fireworks for, some customer in your company. So very important economy. The third I would say is kind of vision. It ties a little bit with expectation management, but when expectation management becomes tactical, that, hey, is feature X on the roadmap, communicating the vision is communicating a framework for your CSMs to think about how to handle these questions in the future. If a customer is asking about X, Y, and Z, and if it just doesn't sit with the ethos of your product, enabling CS with, and maybe this could mean enabling them with a Confluence page. This could mean enabling them with like a roadmap for this quarter or next quarter, but giving them the insight into the why and what is the strategic direction your company's taking in from a product perspective is absolutely critical. You don't want to be a CSM, and whenever you get a question, you always want to be that person who'll be, okay, great, I'm going to grab someone from my team at the next call and talk about this. You want to be self-enabled to do this first level of defense. And I would argue that communicating and incessantly communicating about what's shipped or how is your product thinking about next steps for this quarter or next quarter is absolutely mission critical if you want to run a good CS org and if you want to create better experiences for your customers. The fourth bucket here is sharing feedback. Again, super, super critical. I have done this personally a lot of times. I've faced this problem myself, but creating a forum to discuss consistent tactical feedback, is absolutely golden for any CS team. And by this, what I mean is, as a CSM, you will get a lot of questions on, hey, great, why isn't this export working the way I want it to work? Or why can't I click on this? Or why can't I have this integration? And there needs to be a constant way and a consistent forum for CS to talk to product about this and get product's opinions. And if we decide to not build something, we need to enable them with rationale so that they can go back to the customer and have a meaningful conversation. So this could, again, take a lot of ways. Like sharing feedback could mean, I'm going to share like a tactical way that I've implemented it ahead in this deck. But yeah, this could mean like a recurring meeting internally. This could mean having a Slack channel, which is what I found some success in as well. This could mean just like CS just reaching out to the product emailer. But engaging in this conversation, in my opinion, is extremely critical to create a better customer experience at the end of the day. And finally, this is a super low-hanging fruit. If I'm sure some of you already do this, maybe some of you don't or haven't considered this, but jump on customer calls. It's a win-win situation for everyone involved. A CS, when I was a CSM, I used to love having PMs on my calls because A different person saying the same message sometimes makes a big difference. So it was always a treat to have product managers on the call and talk about like whatever existing product features or something new that we're planning to build. It's great for the customer too. They feel that your company is investing in this relationship, and it's great for product managers. Obviously, nothing sort of beats talking to a human being live and figuring out how they're using your product. So this is an absolute low-hanging fruit. I would really encourage, if there's two things if I would like really recommend from the slide, if you are pressed for time, I would say it's like what's shipped and jumping on customer calls, extremely crucial, and you will see a lot of dividends from this as you start implementing these things at your company. And at this point, you might be thinking, hey, this is awesome, Sanket. You've told me a lot of stuff that I can do for customer success. Well, what do I get back from them, right? Like I'm not running a social service here. I am pressed for time myself. And this is what you get back from customer success. There is actually a lot of things that you can keep your CS teams accountable for. You can ask them. And so I've bucketed them into these 4 buckets. The first one being insight into customer needs. As a CSM, you're really working firsthand with customers. So you are literally on calls with them every single day. And it's fascinating to me where I have been, or I've seen situations where what the product manager thinks that they're building is wildly different from how the customer is actually using it. And I think bridging that gap serves us a lot in product management. So this is, if you have good CSMs on your team, like they will literally have a spreadsheet which will have a list of all the enhancements. It'll have a list of different stories and different areas and thoughts on how customers are actually using the products that you're building. So this is a really big one. I think you can really benefit from this sort of interaction. The second bucket is roadmap prioritization. I'm sure some of you might already be doing this, but if you aren't, something that has really worked for me is, every CSM, or if they're doing their job well, they'll likely have a list of enhancements that every customer is asking for, and they would have it prioritized. So, relating back to the meme that I shared, everything won't be a critical priority. They would have a list of, hey, these are the 3 high priority items for this specific customer. And then once you layer in the renewal timelines of these customers, that is golden feedback as you prioritize your roadmap. And personally, in my experience, we've kind of always kept 20% of bandwidth for these sort of things. So consistently, we ask our CS teams, hey, which renewals are coming up in the next quarter or the quarter after that? And what do they really care about? What are features that they want? What have they said is super high priority? And we almost get this list like clockwork from our CS teams before we get into any planning sessions. And we talk about this as a group. And it's super critical. It's super critical to have the voice of the customer in those planning calls. So, this is just stuff that CS has available, like capitalize on it. You should get this from your CS team. I talked about this already. The fact that I'm saying it again means how important I think it is. Yeah, get in front of your customers. It's awesome. It's really fun. You can run all the fancy analytics you want, but nothing, in my opinion, kind of beats just talking to customers and figuring out how they're using it. Like, what are their problems? What do they care about? And your CSMs, I will guarantee, will love having product managers on their recurring calls. So definitely highly recommend doing that. And finally, success stories. This is awesome. If one of our incentives is to like communicate wins internally and just make sure our product is being adopted, you will be surprised how many cool stories you'll find just talking to CSMs and customers. I've had multiple examples where stuff that I worked, some customer was using it in a completely different way and a completely creative way, and the CSM kind of told me about it. And that's awesome. It feels great as a product manager because it gives me ideas on, okay, great, this is how this customer is thinking and this is how they're using it. Maybe we should eventually create some sort of first class feature to help solve for this. So The point being is that this is just not a one-way relationship. This is not just stuff I'm prescribing that you should do for your customer success team. I think there is enough in there for you to do your job better and create better customer experiences. Awesome. So we've talked high level buckets about customer success teams and what they need from product. We've talked about what you can ask your customer success team for. Now let's kind of start getting a little more tactical. And I'll get in kind of the final phase of this presentation. Is I wanted to leave and share what can you do today as a PM, literally, like once you're out of this call, what can you do? And I'll recommend this. The first thing, just set up one-on-ones with your CSMs. Just talk to them and figure out kind of what's working and what's not working. Like, what are they hearing from the field? How are customers using the product? So if you're not doing this today, I would highly recommend this because it just, is absolutely does 10x relationship, in my opinion. Second is ask CSMs to add you to customer calls. I guarantee that they will love it. Figure out, like, create a list of customers who are likely using products that you helped with. Maybe this is where you bring in product analytics, understand which customers are not using your product, and then go get added to these calls, just talk to them, understand what they're doing. And, you will find some surprising answers from these interactions. Like, in a lot of cases, what I've found is, like, the customer aligns with the hypothesis that we had about building a specific feature, but they just didn't have the time. They're like, yeah, we got, slapped with some sort of audit and we're completely, under the water for the next 3 months. And so that gave us ideas on, okay, how do we continue to make this easy? Does this mean we send you like a summary notification or something? But the point is that once you start talking to customers, obviously you'll get a lot of these insights. So ask your CSMs to do that today. I would highly recommend. This is much easier in a smaller company. In a big company, there are a lot of layers. And I would argue this is actually even more critical in a big company because there are so many layers. So if you are in a big company, even more important, in my opinion, for you to get added to these calls and just to chat with customers. Third, I'll say is, just ask CSMs, how are customers actually using a product? Ask them for success stories. I am sure they'll already have some notes in some spreadsheet somewhere that they can share with you. And, that is actually very useful information for you to kind of review and assess as you build on things that whatever you're building on. And finally, I would say ask CSMs to see if they've recently ran any QBRs, like quarterly business reviews or annual business reviews. And, one of the tactics I mentioned earlier on in the presentation is about how CSMs use QBRs to, create value for customers. I would highly recommend ask CSMs and look at that content because it'll give you a lot of insight and clues into how your product features fit into the larger kind of customer business. And if you do this for 5 or 10 customers, you'll get a pretty diversified view of how is your product being used in maybe a healthcare company versus an automotive company versus a retail company. So highly recommend. CSMs would love to share all of that with you. I did it in my past roles. So this is kind of the list that you can literally do today as a product manager. Some thoughts for the medium long term. These are not things that you can probably do right now or to do today. But if you're already doing it, I would love to kind of chat more with you and understand what's working and what's not working for you. But like I talked about creating a forum, I think this has honestly been one of the most high value activities I have implemented so far. For example, we have a bi-weekly meeting where all CSMs and all PMs, we just come into a room and just tactically talk about things, talk about everything that the CSM has heard from the field in the last 2 weeks. And obviously we use tools and stuff, and I'll share a little bit about that. But yeah, I would highly recommend trying this out if you want to create a consistent funnel for getting customer feedback back in the product. And one of the rules that I would recommend that we do on these calls is we discuss the why, but we don't really solution. So we don't go into the details on, oh, great, like we can add a button here and solve with this for, this feature. we just try to align on the why. And if we align on the actual problem statement, we kind of add it to the roadmap. But if we don't agree with the premise of the feedback from the customer, we try to enable the CS team to go back to the customer and push back, or set up a detailed call. And that kind of, going back to expectations management, that helps the CS team have meaningful conversations about this. So this has definitely been a super high value activity for me. I talked about inputs and product planning. You could really create a process around this. As an example, we are in a place where, yeah, we do this like clockwork before every planning session. And it's just not customer success. We get this from sales as well. But CS is already doing a lot of legwork on managing these lists. And from there, it's pretty easy just to ask them, can you just prioritize this list for your portfolio and send me the top 2 or 3 requests from customers that, for them whose renewal is coming up in the next 2 or 3 quarters. That's what we do. We look at the next 2 quarters. We try to figure out what are those like high value enhancements and how can we tweak our roadmap to account for those. And we try to save like I said, like 15 to 20% of our bandwidth for these things. And again, all of this is super critical because of the incentive that I talked about before about renewing customers. If they see that the product team is actually working on things that they've asked for, it builds credibility in the entire chain. So been extremely useful for me personally. And finally, strengthening your go-to-market motion. I would say this is not very apparent in a very small company because things are moving so quickly. It might feel like, oh, I don't want to add a process around shipping this out. I just want to ship this and move on to the next thing. But I would argue that this is actually super critical in a small company because of the stuff I talked about before. Like you have to enable your CS team. You have to sell your features because you never know, irrespective of how big or small you think your feature is, your customer might be looking at it from a very different lens. So some tangible things we've done is, as a part of every sort of feature release, all PMs try to create like demo links. It could mean like a 5-minute Loom video, slide decks that communicate the why. So it's not like a slide deck that just has bullet points and what the feature does, but it's really about, hey, this is the problem that we sought out to solve. And this is what the CS team should talk about when they communicate about this feature. Extremely, super. It's been really awesome to do this. If you guys are doing flavors of this, I would love to hear more. But for us, basically, we've created the slide deck template with just like 5 slides. What's the problem statement? What's this feature about? How should CS talk about this feature? And how do you like implement or turn this on? And what's coming next? So that kind of builds context for your CSMs around, hey, great, like we're doing this, but this is the other stuff in the pipeline, and this is how we're thinking about this product offering holistically. So I hope this is helpful. I'll leave all of you with one final thing is I use Productboard a lot. Like I said, Adam has not paid me to do this, but I use Productboard a lot. And the first question whenever I see these bullet points is, okay, great, just tell me how should I try this? So this is that slide. So if you are using Productboard, here's what's really worked well for me and what I would recommend. So regarding meetings, right? So I talked about this whole concept of, set up a bi-weekly or a weekly or a monthly meeting with CS. And what we've done is we've created a template in Productboard and enabled CS to submit insights. And our CS team does a fantastic job of whenever they hear something new from the field, we've almost gotten into this flavor where if it's not in Productboard, it's, it doesn't exist. So they do a great job of like submitting these insights, and the template is actually geared on delving into the why. So it's not just enough to say, hey, customer X wants X, Y, Z, but the template is kind of a forcing function for CSMs to add more context on this is what the customer is really trying to do. And this is what they recommend, or this is what I recommend. What do you think? So I would highly recommend this. A couple of things that really started happening after we did this. One was it was very easy to get buy-in from other stakeholders, especially like customer success, to do this consistently, because they now know that these things are not going into a black hole. Like there's a meeting, we all discuss this effectively. So now it's just been kind of that, it's just churned in motion, and we're just into this mature state of everyone just submitting insights and knowing that, product board insights is a place to like share feedback. And as a product team, we all collectively look at that and talk about this tangibly. The second cool thing I think this will give you is it might be awesome to have your leadership on these calls too. And the reason for that is there's there'll be this reservation that this call is too tactical, right? Like we're talking really in the weeds about what did customer A ask me? What did customer B, what are they asking? But just optically, when let's say your product leaders are in this meeting, if they see a same theme being talked about in every single meeting, you don't have to do a bunch of selling to make sure it's on the roadmap for the next time. It just subconsciously fits in and say, yeah, like we've been hearing about this in every single call when we review product board insights. It's clearly super important. So it definitely helps with that. And the goal for us in these meetings when we run this is we try to get to inbox zero of sorts. So for every 2-week period, if there are unprocessed insights, we look at those, resolve them, tag it to a roadmap, or we push back and enable our CS team, and then we try to get to inbox zero. And that's really kind of the golden state for us. So if you have any questions about this process, I'm happy to share more. This has been absolutely phenomenal, according to me. The second thing we did on this whole like managing expectations and communicating the vision is super low tech, but yeah, just we made the product board portal available in Salesforce via an iframe. And it's awesome. All the work that product managers are doing to build these go-to-market decks and build these demo videos, they all live in this portal. So whenever we're onboarding a new CSM, or if someone wants to deep dive into, hey, what did we ship? Like all of this information is available and it's already pushed out. So the inefficiency of someone reaching out to a PM starts to go away a little bit. So I would highly recommend this. It's been extremely useful for us. And finally, I think the other third thing, which I think arguably is one of the most critical things that's come out from this process, is if you have a very solid foundations of tagging insights or feedback to customers, when you think about the what shipped bucket from a previous slide, you are now as a product manager in a position where if something is shipping, you actually know which customers asked for this. And you can actually enable your CS team and say, hey, CS team, awesome, we just shipped this. Based on all these insights, these 5 customers have asked about this, bring this up in your next call when you talk to them, in your next recurring meeting. And this is extremely valuable. As a CSM, this stuff is gold. As a customer, this stuff is amazing because it just builds a lot of trust and credibility, because they now start feeling that feedback they're giving is not going to a black hole, but your company is actually closing the loop with them. So so this is kind of a summary of how to do all this in Productboard. So yeah, I think this is the end of my presentation. I think I blazed through it quickly, but if I had to summarize all of this, I hope you take away the incentives that drive CS teams. I hope you take away the fact that working more with your CS teams is definitely in your interests as well. It can give you a lot of good information, and it's in your customer's interest. And I hope you got some tactical and tangible, ideas on how to do this in your company. So yeah, I think that'll be my time here.
Awesome, Sanket. That was brilliant. I could not have done that better myself in terms of kind of wrapping that all together into Productboard. So thank you very much for your time. We do have some time for Q&A. What I'll just do quickly is remove that. So had a few folks kind of reach out on LinkedIn Live and also on Zoom. So we've got about 10 minutes for Q&A. So what we'll do is we'll try and tackle some of these. And then what we can do is we can actually head over into our Slack community if we want to keep the conversation going as well. So I think 2 things that really resonated with me, Sanket, you touched on some really important just principles on how to think about just building that glue in those relationships between customer success teams, product, and just the value. And I think there's two quotes I really loved. It's like strengthening the relationship builds credibility across the entire workflow. And then one of the ideas you mentioned in terms of how you're fostering more collaboration is just having that recurring forum to kind of gather that feedback from the CS team to discuss the why, but having it outside of like quarterly planning and it not being too structured. We actually tried that with our teams, and it was amazing. Just like the quality of the conversation and just having an hour of like a loosely guided session. How did you run that for it? Like, how did it work?
Yeah, and Adam, I'm glad you mentioned this, because when we started running these meetings, there was almost this sort of reservation and, oh my God, is this meeting too tactical? Like, there are like 15 people on this call, like we're getting into the weeds of like a specific feature request. So I think it's important to get over that, because there has to be some time in the company where someone talks about the tactical stuff. And this is that meeting. So I think in general, what we try to do, Adam, and what has worked for me is, like, our CS team is amazing. They come up with all these different insights. So we just literally go line by line and we're like, hey, let's start from this customer. What are they asking? And it's a lot of that is already in the insights. So I try to review some of them like offhand before getting into that call. And B, I think the second kind of pitfall or landmine that you will have to see is like people don't start solutioning, because then it can truly become a rabbit hole. And so it's important at sometimes if you have to review 20 insights, like it's important to say like, okay, great guys, like we agree that this is a legitimate problem that we agree that we'll solve. Like as a product, we agree with the hypothesis. We'll add it to a roadmap. Let's move on to the next one and solution this at some point later.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. All right. We'll get through a few other questions. So Janine reached out and said, you mentioned to get input from CS for product planning. How do you involve CS in your discovery process? What does that look like? So you touched on it a little bit, but yeah, I'd love to hear, I guess, an example if you have one from your own company and your experience.
Yeah. So I think so there are two things. One is from a discovery process, or figuring out if our hypothesis is correct or not. I recently actually did this for a feature at my company, and I worked with a CSM, literally got down and say, hey, let's create a list of these 10 customers. What's your read on how people are using X or Y or Z? Let's create a list of these 10 customers. And then I kind of talk to those customers, set up like 45-minute sessions with each one of them, and just a discovery on what are you liking, what are you not liking, the standard process, right? But it was very helpful to keep the CSM in the loop, because it just changes the nature of your relationship with your customer success team, but also changes the nature of how the customers look at the CSMs. At that point, they start looking at them as advisors, because they're like, oh yeah, the CSM went through the trouble of talking to a PM, getting them on a call, and the PM is taking through whatever the trouble of talking to us. So that's like one way I've done this. From a planning perspective, it's very low tech, quite honestly. We, like clockwork, before a planning session, like two weeks before, we ask CS to share their inputs in a spreadsheet that we have for them. They just give us a list of like top 5 or 6 features for renewals that are coming up. Because if you successfully implement this insight recurring meeting, you should already have great insight into what's the trends from the market, right? Because if assuming a feature has a bunch of insights associated with it, means it's asked about quite a bit. But from a prioritization standpoint, we ask CS on, tell us about the renewals that are coming up and what is important or critical features for these renewals, and what's your read on if we don't deliver something, will they churn or not? So that's like one lens we use. And yeah, it's been super helpful. And especially closing the loop with the customer that, hey, we shipped something, it's an incredible feeling.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And I think also highlighting that for the customer as well. I was on a call recently where we called out using Productboard, like, hey, this is what we invested in recently. Folks on your team to ask for it, including the person on the call. And that's where you kind of really see that light bulb moment in terms of them feeling valued, feeling like they're a partner as part of it. So yeah, I completely agree. We've got room for one more question. I quite like this one that came through on LinkedIn. It was, love your example of enabling CSM teams with the insight into the why and the strategic direction to help them kind of handle these conversations that we're having with customers, and it being absolutely critical. I was wondering if you could, because from my experience, it's not easy to do that. It's not easy to ensure that your GTM and CSM teams have the same context, that they're speaking the same language, that they're part of that process. Like, what does that look like in your company, or how do you, I guess, what process do you follow to be able to make sure that they are speaking the same language and that you're iterating on it to make sure you're on the same page?
Yeah, so like super low tech things we've done. One is, let's say we enable them with a roadmap with a set of features. So like on the feature card, we, for most features, we have a what section. Like, what is it about, and a why section. Like, why are we building this? So that's one very low tech way that, if you really are thinking about this from the ground up, like every feature card you have in whatever tool you're using, have a why section in there, so that whenever CSMs are looking at that, like they start speaking, or they start getting where you're coming from, right? So I think that's one. Second is, another great example of why these recurring calls are super helpful. So when we talk about these insights, like I said, we don't solution, but we try to align on the hypothesis. And that's where, if we say that, hey, as a team, we just don't agree, this is feedback we'll ever work on, and here is the why, like just tactically, we just put that as a comment on that specific insight. And if everyone is in that session, everyone kind of starts picking up on the same theme. So just like how PMs start picking up on themes that are popping up, CS starts picking up on themes that product is always saying no to. So that's another kind of low-tech way to build that. And obviously, it goes without saying, but as much as you can enable them with a Confluence page of your vision and mission and, the roadmaps as best as you can, that obviously helps. But I think these are like, having the why in the feature card and actually like commenting on the inside when you talk about these, I think have worked well for us. And it is a hard problem. I'm not saying this will solve 100% of this problem, but at least it will be an attempt to get there.
Yeah, 100%. And you're nudging it in the right direction and you're learning from it. Yeah.
It's exactly another reason why the recurring calls are so crucial.
Yeah. Awesome, Sanket. Well, here, look, thank you so much for joining us today. It was an awesome session. I learned a lot. I know there was brilliant questions. We had folks on the Zoom call, on LinkedIn Live, and they really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for being with us today, Sanket.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam, and thanks everyone for joining from whichever part of the world you joined in. Reach out on LinkedIn. Would love to chat if you guys have other thoughts on this.
Yeah, I was going to say, just as we kind of wrap up, what's the best way for folks to kind of keep in touch with you and reach out?
Yeah, I'm on the Slack channel, so definitely you can find me there. I'm also on LinkedIn. I think I had my LinkedIn link there, so find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn or the Slack channel. I think those are the best ways.
Awesome, great. All right, so just a few kind of wrap up thoughts. We're going to post the event survey, so let us know your feedback on it. As we were talking about, you can continue the conversation over in Slack with Sanket. And then also, if you want a sneak peek in terms of what else is coming up, you can find out more at productmakers.com. But more on that, a little bit about our product community. So it's an awesome place for you to kind of level up your product management. So you can connect with other product professionals, you can access events like this and workshops, and also participate in other programs. So we got mentoring, monthly roundtables, and also our book club as well. And we're going to be doing a new book soon, so ideas are welcome. And we've got a ton of upcoming events coming up as well. There's tons of other ways to get involved. As I mentioned, you can speak. So if you're interested in speaking, you can actually reach out to us and find out more on the website. You can become a mentor or a mentee. So you can join our mentorship program. It's completely free. Feel free to join and sign up. And then we also got roundtables, as I mentioned before, which is like a lean coffee style conversation where you can get into nitty-gritty conversations with other product managers. And then finally, the book club as well, where you can join in and have discussions. All right, that's it from us. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is brought to you by our Product Makers community by Productboard. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the week, everyone, and look forward to continuing the conversation. Cheers.
Bye.